Hello. Today we're in Proverbs chapter 13, starting in verse 15. Good understanding gains favor, but the way of the unfaithful is hard. Okay, wow. And well, what's actually there's two verses together here. Every prudent man acts with knowledge, but a fool lays open his folly. So what's he saying here? Good understanding gains favor, but the prudent man acts with knowledge. And so you're putting them together. Good understanding. Not don't just know something, but get your mind around it. Understand what you're talking about. A fool just talks on top of his head and doesn't even realize what's coming out of their mouth. God says, "Be careful. People judge you by what you say. People will remember more of what you said, or should I say, they'll react more on what you said than on anything you've ever done." And they'll hold on to something you said for a really, really long time. It's just the way humans are. I wish we weren't like that, but we are, and we got to realize that. So yeah, think about okay. Let's not be a fool. Let's think about what's coming out of our mouth, and when it does come out of our mouth and it's foolish, nip it in the bud right away. Take care of it right away. Because the longer something stews in someone's head and then they change it. I mean, I can't tell how many times I've talked to people and then they've actually worked their problems out. But then it takes like weeks or sometimes months, sometimes years, and then they wish, man, we could have worked this out a long time ago and never had this problem in the first place. Nip it in the bud. Yeah, that's understanding too. Understanding that we are going to say some dumb things. We all do at some point say some dumb things, but nip it in the bud as fast as you can, and then use understanding to say, what comes out of here is kind of really important. And 17, a wicked messenger falls into trouble, but a faithful ambassador brings health. So a wicked messenger, someone who's trying to bring you bad news that really isn't bad news, right? Trying to knock you off your game, trying to bring heartache into your life because maybe their life's miserable and they want you to be miserable. So they take the truth and maybe change it a little bit. But a faithful ambassador. Now, faithful means what? That they do exactly what they're supposed to do, what they're told to do, even if they don't like it. That's what a faithful person does. Because even though, well, I don't want to tell them this because they're going to get mad, but I'll just sugarcoat it for them. That's not being faithful. Tell them exactly what's going on, so then that person has the ability to make a decision for the life that's best for the life. But they might not like what I have to say. Well, has there been times in your life where you wish someone would have told you something? You might not have been willing to receive it right then, but you sure wish you had that knowledge earlier than later. Well, that's what God's talking about here. He's talking about being the person to give someone what they really need when they need it. Be faithful to them, meaning when you're faithful to someone else, your needs aren't what's mainly important. It's the other person's needs what's mainly important. And boy, if the world got that, wouldn't the world be such a better place? Wow, what an amazing thing. Proverbs 13, verse 18. Poverty and shame will come to him who disdains correction, but he who regards a rebuke will be honored. Okay, so he's talking about a lot of things here. This can deal with money. This can deal with relationships. This can deal with people co-workers and situations like that. Poverty and shame will come if you disdain correction and continue going on the wrong path. If someone says, "Hey, you're going this way," but if you don't stop, then you know what? Poverty and shame is going to come because you're going to keep going headlong to a disaster that someone else sees. You can't see it because you're blinded to it. Because you just think that you can do no wrong. You think you're going to be great, boom, boom. And when correction comes, you disdain it. What happens? You're bringing the shame. And then poverty comes. Why? But poverty is not having what you want to have, right? That's what poverty has. Poverty is when you don't have what you need, right? And you can lose all that by simply doing that. But he regards a rebuke. Now, no one likes to get rebuked. Let's be honest. No one likes to come some say, "Hey, you're wrong. I need to rebuke you." I remember first year I was here at the church, a lady come up to me after church and says, "I need to rebuke you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I just smiled. She didn't really know what she was saying. And there's a wrong way and a right way to do everything. And and she's just like, because she just didn't understand the point of where we were going with that, and what it was. Well, I'm not going to say what it was. I don't want to point the person out. But afterwards, it's like, okay, but we got through all of that. But here's the thing, what I took from that was, okay, she didn't quite get it, so I needed to what? Change how I presented that the next time. And so I did. Then the next time, what I did, instead of assuming everybody in the crowd knew what I was talking about, I said the same phrase that the person rebuked me of, but then I explained the phrase. And that person was there, and it was like, oh, okay, wow, what's going on? And everybody got it a lot better. So you can always learn from something. Because here's the thing, you can come, we do a lot of things, and we want to be going forward, right, all the time. But there's sometimes we're going to go backwards, and we start to go backwards. Allow those corrections and rebukes in your life so you can stop what's making you go backwards. Because here's the thing, we don't always realize when we're going backwards. We think we're going forward, but actually we're on this little conveyor belt and we're walking, but the belt's going quicker backwards, and we're actually going backwards, and we don't even realize it. And here's the thing: you can only go back so far before destruction happens. Have someone help you get off of that. Say, hey, you're walking. You think you're walking forward, but you're not. And do we have the wisdom to allow those people in our lives? And do we have the wisdom to think about that? Now, just because they do it right there and then, yeah, you might react badly, but think about it. Every time someone says you did something wrong, it's a lesson learned, because here's the deal. Even if you did nothing wrong, somehow they perceived it as wrong. Think about that. Somehow they perceived it as wrong. That doesn't mean you're wrong. Doesn't mean you need to go apologize. Doesn't mean you sinned. But why did they take it that way? Because if they took it that way, someone else could take it that way. What do most people do? Oh, well, this is what this person said. I can't. And everybody get this little consortium with them, but you have no idea. You never know what's in someone's head. Okay, no matter, you'll never know for sure what's in someone else's head. Okay, and how do you have good ideas? Well, how they prove themselves over time, right? But here's the deal. Think about that, and realize that in your life, that's so important. That even when you do get rebuked about something, even when you're 100% in the right, ask them why. Why something? And it could be they need rebuked. It could be they need to get a correction. Think, do some self-reflection. Wow, how could I have done that better? And if you do that, you know what you're going to do? The person who rebuked or corrected you, if they were wrong. Now, that's true. Someone could rebuke and correct you and be dead wrong. But you know what? By listening to them and saying and doing certain things, and things, they could come back to you and say, you know what, I was wrong about you. You know, and I have stories. Well, I'll do a quick story about one of those. I had this guy. His name was Ken Dunn. And I have permission to say his name. It was years ago. I was at Ocean Way Assembly of God, and I've been hired to be the children's pastor. Now I had some different ways of doing things. And him and his wife were in his 60s, and they didn't like some of the things I was doing. They thought I wasn't on the level. If anybody knows me, I always have a different way of doing things. I don't like to do the same thing just the same way. And they were wondering what I was doing, and he got real mad. And one day the pastor called me in the office and said, hey, Ken Dunn. Now, he was the chairman of the board. He'd been on the board for like 30 years, and this church was a huge mega church. And he's like, you don't want to mess with this guy. And he's a retired police officer too, got to find out. And I was like, well, you know what? Somehow, I don't think I did anything wrong. But somehow him and his wife took what I did wrong. And he wasn't involved in children's ministry. His wife taught our sixth grade Sunday school class. But it was just once. So I wasn't exactly sure what happened. So I said to my pastor, I'm going to go and I'm going to ask him Matthew 18. I'm going to go, hey, you got offense with me? Hey, I like to take out dinner. My treat. You tell me what's wrong, because I just want to get it right. Pastor looked at me and said, it's your funeral. I said, what's the Bible says? So I sent him a letter. I sent him a certified letter. I was in my 20s. I wasn't quite, I was scared to go down. So I sent him a certified letter where he had to sign for it. Looking back, probably not the smartest thing I ever did. But so fast forward 2 weeks later, the guy comes up to me. He says, and he gets me in the hall upstairs. We had 2 stories, and he takes me to. He says, we'll go to this corner over here. And we're going in the corner. I'm like, oh, what's going on? And the guy gets down on his knees and says, I am so sorry. I didn't really realize where you were coming from. And I said, I got him. I said, you don't need to apologize. I do dumb things too. And so we had this great conversation. Long story short, I didn't do anything wrong, but how I responded to that rebuke helped him see something, and then we became great friends. And actually, he said, anytime you need something, you just ask. You know what? I was there 6 years, And from that moment on, every time I asked the board for something as a children's pastor, I never got turned down. You know what? Because they saw the fruit of the ministry, and it was the for children ministry. It was the highlight of my career because we ended up getting 700 kids there. That was awesome. But that's the key thing. How you handle that? How does someone else perceive something? We need to think about that because we get so self-devoted ourselves, we forget that other people have thoughts and feelings and perceptions as well. And if we can learn this lesson from Solomon, you'll have a much happier, fulfilling life. And you know what? Jesus wants that for you because Jesus loves you. I love you, and you're absolutely awesome.